Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Marie. Today, I want to talk about something that probably hits close to home for a lot of people, even if we don't always like to admit that out loud. So, we're going to step inside the anatomy of a toxic cycle. Specifically, what happens when someone undergoes a narcissistic discard, how people shirk responsibility through subtle and sometimes not so subtle emotional abuse, and most importantly, how we stop ourselves from holding on to hope for someone who is never actually going to change. We aren't naming names, this is archetypes. Honestly, we don't need to. These types of characters come up in nearly all of our lives. And the truth about abusive and narcissistic dynamics is that they follow a blueprint. The actors change, but the script stays pretty much the same. Let's break down how that happens, why it hurts, and how you can get your power back. So, first, I want to talk about that discard phase. In toxic or high narcissism dynamics, relationships don't end through mature conversation or mutual understanding. They end through devaluation and discard. When a toxic partner realizes they've extracted all the validation, labor, or resource they can get from someone, or when the person start asking for bare minimum accountability, the switch flips. Suddenly, everything you did for them is rewritten. The effort you put into building their life, erased. The compromises you made, reframed as control. Your worth, reduced to zero, seemingly overnight. They will attack your character, belittle your status, and call you names designed to strip away your dignity, telling you you're nothing and that you brought nothing to the table. The red flag. The discard isn't about reality, it's about control. It's the abuser's final effort to make sure they leave the room with the upper hand. They insult your value so they don't have to face their own total lack of contribution. So, what happens right after someone goes through this kind of brutal rejection? This is where the behavior gets really slick. When a toxic person gets discarded or called out, their ego takes a massive, agonizing blow. Their immediate reaction isn't self reflection. They don't pull out a journal, they don't go to therapy. And I do want to take a moment to say that all of this that I am sharing with you is from my experiences with narcissism and having gone to therapy for nearly 10 years. Again, if you need help with these kinds of situations, I cannot give you advice that you need to seek therapy for. You do need to speak to a licensed clinician, and I cannot give you any kind of clinical advice, as the saying goes. All of this is just based off my own experiences and sort of what I've learned through peer support and pattern recognition that I have done. So, instead, they look for immediate external validation to the bandage, the wound that they have. So, how do they do that? Number one, they come running back to safe harbors. They reach out to former partners, close friends, or people in their orbit that they know care about them, and they come in looking often injured, leaning in on your empathy and looking for a place to land. Then there's slick breadcrumbs that they might leave. They do things that will subtly weave in comments about situations, and they kind of manipulate the framing of those situations so that they can be perceived as desirable or some sort of feeling sad, or and sympathy for them comes into play. So there's also the little plausible deniability trait. If you call some of them on it, then they'll say, "Oh, I was just repeating what so and so said." But make no mistake, when they say something, there's a reason they're saying it, and it is a way to test your boundaries and see if you'll buy into the image that they are trying to convey. So they shirk responsibility for their choices by playing the victim, all while quietly angling for their next ego fix. Which brings us to the hardest part of all of this. Us. Why do we stay hooked? Why do we find ourselves pulled toward people like this, even when we know the dynamic is messy? Even when our kids, our best friends, or our own instincts are screaming, proceed with caution. It's because of hope. And hope is a beautiful trait, don't get me wrong. But in toxic dynamics, hope is often used as a trap. We hope that because we see potential, that the person that we are seeing the potential in will step into it. We hope that because they came running to us when things were going badly, it means that they finally see our value. And when they return, figuring out that they do want to still be involved with us, we hope that this time the story will end differently. But here's the hard truth that you need to hear today. You cannot heal someone who uses their wounds as an excuse to weaponize their charm. When someone shows you that they move from person to person seeking validation without ever fixing the foundation, believe them. You can appreciate chemistry, you can recognize magnetism, you can acknowledge that you are in love with them. But you cannot build a home inside a storm. You cannot make someone reciprocate your feelings, and you cannot wait around for them to realize that you matter and that you are worth something once they have pushed you out the door. So if you're listening to this right now and feeling that familiar tug of war between chemistry and clarity, listen to the people who truly do love you. Listen to your gut. Observing someone's pattern without getting pulled into their cycle is the ultimate power move. Sit back, listen, watch how they treat people when things are going wrong. Because eventually, the mask will slip with everyone. So make sure that you hold your boundaries tight, protect your space, and don't let anyone turn your empathy into their landing pad unless they've earned the right to be there. Thank you for listening today. As always, keep your eyes open, protect your peace, and I'll talk to you next time. Remember, mind is the most important story that we'll ever tell. You've been listening to The Mind of Simery.